Now on this video, I'm going to share some paintwork tips that I used on my FCR paintwork. And those include backmasking tips, painting tips, but the biggest one, laying out a very complex paint job that when you actually start doing it, you'll see very quickly it turns into a labor of love. It starts with a concept sketch. It ends up with a painted motorcycle. And step one, as always, everything's got to be in prime, sanded perfectly smooth before you go on to any real paintwork. And I put a lot of the video in fast forward so that you could enjoy watching it. It would be a reasonable length. It wouldn't be the length of the full-length videos, and actually they all are out on the channel. And this would comprise many hours of video, that's for sure. But I think you can get the idea and get the tips in your mind and see just how this paint job evolved. But the bodywork here needed a lot of repairs and things to be fixed. The fender needed a lot of work to be fixed. I wanted to lay out the tape stripe in a way that made sense. It matched some of my other bikes. I started out laying everything out with a center line, and I'll show that later in the video. And, well, we'll show it right now, in fact. When you have that center line, you can work off that, and it's very easy. You can measure to both sides, measure back to the middle. You can do it with a piece of paper if you don't have a ruler handy. But getting that in the middle is absolutely critical, because if that stripe is off even by 1/8 of an inch, anybody that has a good eye for things that are crooked is going to pick up on it right away. And then all the work you put into a paint job like this, it's sad if you don't get it right anyway. Anyway, all fine line 3M tape. I put about $100 worth of tape into this job, if I remember right. And I remember having 4 different thicknesses. Now, no two stripes on this bike are the same thickness. And the stripe that goes down the side of the bike, the stripe itself tapers, and the distance between the tape tapers. So when you think about how complex that gets to be, well, and if you don't do it that way, it really doesn't look right. So anyway, I had a vision in my mind. I made a lot of concept sketches, did a lot of work to get all of the parts nicely sanded and finished and in white paint. Always want to start off with the smallest color. If you were to paint the bike yellow first and then try to paint a black and white stripe down there, it's a lot more work than if you paint the stripes first. Then all you really need to backmask is one side of the tape, pull the tape and backmask the other side. And since this tape is such a complex shape and it tapers, you can see where when the tank has a curve in it, you have to take into account a lot of stuff to make it look right. In fact, in a lot of ways, to make it look right, it's got to be a little not so right. But I did a lot of back and forth with this. Again, with John Pothia's help, did a lot of concept sketches. See, by making those bars, or well, some people call them ladders, what happens is if they're wrong, if they're too long, it doesn't have the look of the Yamaha. If the angle is wrong, you lose that look. If they're too square or too oblong, it's a funny thing. And I spent a day in a garage, a whole day, to lay these parts out. And when I was done, I was glad I did it, because I knew in the end, having that all laid out and lined up was going to be a key part of this job. And it went late into the night. Oh, I remember this. It was freezing cold outside, but I remember how happy I was knowing that that part of the job is done. And when that part is done, actually it was Turbo Steve had the idea to make, right at the back of it, make a little curve. So that was a good idea, Steve, by the way. And thank you. And anyway, there's just an endless supply of labor here. What you never, unless you've ever done this, and I've done it many, many times, you start off thinking this is going to be 50, 60, 80 hours. And then when it gets to 200, you think, hey, maybe I'm not even half done here. But when you're done and you have those parts all laid out, because I had the bike assembled so that those stripes would be in perfect alignment. And if those stripes don't line up exactly, people will pick up on it. Now, a lot of my friends are very highly skilled painters or whatever, and they will see little mistakes like that. So I was real careful doing this. Now, all of these videos, again, they're full-length videos. They're 15 to 25 minutes long. And there's a lot of them, and they're all out on the channel. And you look up FZR restoration, and you can see this all in real time. Well, but in real time, a lot of people don't have the time for that. And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, your videos are too long," or whatever. Well, we're trying to make up for that now, and get that center line. That is a key thing to laying out a paint job. If you just take tape and slap on a stripe, boy oh boy, it's like when you put a stripe on the hood of a car and it's crooked. As soon as you go around a corner and the stripe doesn't exactly go around the corner the right way. Anyway, this was something I was going to see. I wanted it to line up with the fender exactly, so I was real fussy. Every step of the way I worked off center lines, and in the end I think it really paid off. Now, of course, all paint work is in the eye of the beholder, and all of the backmasking that I did and all this work would be for nothing if the day comes that, and we were doing this when it was snowing out, if that day comes and you pull the tape up and it's crooked, boy, you're gonna be crying. I'll be crying if it happens to me. Anyway, and by the way, on the full-length videos, there's an awful lot of really good tips. And in this case, I wanted to just explain, we were doing several bikes at the same time here. And sometimes when you do a job like this with a center line, and Les Demet was the one that showed me that tip many years ago. Thank you, Les. What happens is, once you're familiar working with a center line, when you're done and you pull up the tape, that sucker is perfect. You can look at it from every angle you want, and it's right perfect. And I have looked at even things that come from a factory and seen, it's a little off to the left or the right. I don't know. So I don't want mine to be off to the left or the right. Anyway, the gas tank, and all these things are not simple for sure. And getting that to go right through the gas cap. Now this has a stripe on the top that has to match the seat. The middle of the seat has to match the middle of the tank, which has to line up with the fairing and the fender. Sounds real easy until you pick up a roll of tape and try to do it. But the biggest tip to get off it, the biggest thing is, and it's the same for hundreds of model airplanes that I painted. Paint whatever color on the motorcycle or the model plane is the smallest. That color is the one you do first. Because that one, when you backmask it, it just saves you a ton of work. Picture how much backmasking this would be if we painted this yellow first. It would be a nightmare. And you would use an extra $100 worth of masking tape. And plus the labor, of course. But if you have that tip in the bank, boy, and once you can do this reasonably, it makes doing this kind of work so much easier and so much better. Another thing, backmasking with tin foil. Walt Prey was the one that shared that with us. He's a custom car painter, the late Walt Prey in California. He shared that information. I'm trying to pass it on. Thank you very much, Walt. But the backmasking, when you're using the tin foil, it's a lot easier than when you're not using tin foil. And now the next step on this is I want to paint the black. So you can picture in your mind, I've got to backmask everything that's not black. Think about that. That stripe, there's a stripe under the stripe. There's a stripe where it goes from yellow to white. This is a complex paint job. That's why I did all these concept sketches on the original videos. And the original videos go on for eternity, it seems. But the idea is to pass this information on. Because I know there are people that really would like to do a complex paint job, but they're intimidated by the fact, how do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? How can you, some little tip that would make it a lot easier, maybe it would inspire some people. It always used to inspire me when somebody would share some good quality information with me, and I'd always feel compelled to pass it on. Now, this is fine line tape, 3M fine line tape. It leaves a nice edge. But one thing, if you have a big paint buildup, if you take an automotive gun and paint that, you're not going to get a real nice edge. That's the problem, because there's going to be too much paint at the edge where you pull up the tape. So I bit the bullet and used my Iwata airbrush. It takes a lot of time to paint that much surface with an airbrush, but the tape lines come out absolutely flawless that way. So in my case, I'm not looking to save time, and I'm not looking to save anything. I just want to have a perfect job when I'm done. So, and I know the information I've passed on to other people, I've got so many, hundreds of people have commented on, oh, thank you for that information, thank you for that. I wish I knew what people needed me to share. And if I know it, and if I don't, maybe I have a way I can find it out. And see that little curve on the end? Again, that was Turbo Steve's idea. So I always believe in giving credit to the people that help me out, because I want to help them out. Now, this is a lot of the stuff using an airbrush. If I put this in real time, this would be a 20-minute video right there. So, but the airbrush, especially in a Wada, is a super high quality airbrush. It's very handy when you don't want to have a big thick paint edge, or if you're doing something and you don't want to have a lot of overspray. Hey, you can see one side's done. And imagine if that part was yellow now, and how much backmasking you'd have to do that. And we were trying to beat the snow here. And I remember all during this job, it snowed, didn't snow, snowed, didn't snow. Oh, man. Things you remember years later. But anyway, we get to the point with it that it's really starting to look like what I had envisioned. And, of course, that's the beauty of doing this. As you see, it's like a construction project. Here we're about 2 months into it. I hadn't put the new front end on yet. Pokey was getting me a new set of forks. He didn't get them. Took him a while, and thank you, Pokey, for getting them. And he finally did get a brand new pair. And when I finally got the yellow sprayed, I called it Yamaha Yellow. Dennis down at the paint shop, he mixed it up to my complete. We just kept looking at it until it looked right. And then he made me an extra quart just in case. And you want to know something funny? I don't want to let the cat out of the bag. I needed the extra quart. If you stay around long enough and see the end of this video, you'll see why. It's a tragic story, but I needed the extra quart. Anyway, so from this point on, it's picking up little flaws, getting the edges to be nice. I sprayed the 4-to-1 clear on everything. That was all very straightforward, redundant stuff. But this striping job, this paint job itself, and it's reminiscent of why I like it, is because back in the day when I was racing an Amar, only the guys that were really good racers had the real Yamahas, the ones that had this kind of a paint job, and some of them were white with a red stripe or a black stripe, but they were the real race bikes. They weren't street bikes that were converted. And this always looked, I don't know, something that I thought was cool on a street bike. And then Yamaha had the 60th anniversary of the R6 and R1, and a similar thing, but again, it's all in the eye of the beholder anyway. So, and I got my dream come true. I got 2 Yamahas with ladders, so I don't know how many I need. Maybe I need 2 more. But anyway, I wanted to get this all stripped down. This was at some point in time here. The winter was going on forever. And I was doing some stuff for Turbo Steve at the time. We had more, you can't see it on the table. There were other things in the shop. But boy, it brings back a lot of memories. And making these decals, John Pathia helped me make all of the decals for this job. And we laid out the lettering, the FZR lettering, unique lettering. And every part of it is a labor of love. Here we're sanding this out with 2000 grit paper. I'm going to buff it out. And as I'm looking back at this, just buffing these parts out before I assembled the bike, holy mackerel, was that a labor of love. You can't imagine how many hours went into this. Even I'm impressed when I see how many hours went into this. But eventually, if you stick with something long enough and you work hard enough, you'll always get exactly what you want. There's that FZR lettering. Again, thank you, John. And look at the gloss. If you go out in the garage right now, look at that gloss many years later, and it's still just beautiful. It never faded. It never did anything not to my satisfaction. But the last labor of love on anything is that final sanding and final buffing out with the 8065. And this is the point in the job that almost everybody that I know that I've helped learn to paint, you get to this point in the job. And what happens is you want to rush it because you want to see the bike all put together. And obviously you want to go to a meetup and ride. And what I had planned, I worked this whole thing around the fact I was going to take it to Dale's market meetup, the first real nice, spring market meetup, show it off to everybody. And in my mind, I was thinking, what a great day that's going to be. And what happened is, it didn't turn out to be that great of a day. But I'll save that for the ending of the video. And anyway, buffing this out when the 8065, always use a new pad on the buffer, a brand new pad, and 8065, 2000 grit paper, and the buffing on this paint even when I look at it now, it's like a mirror. It's absolutely beautiful. And you think of how many hours have gone into it up to this point. We've got, this turned out to be at the end when the job was done, and I added up all the hours. This was a 900-hour restoration. And needless to say, I don't even want to know about how much the money was. But I still have the bike, and it is still such a blast to ride one of these old FZRs. They are a little bit peaky. They have a little quirky power band, but boy, when you lean on it, are they fun to ride. Now, this is the first, we went up to Perkins. This is the store, showed off the bike. This is on the way back. Coming down the mountain, there's an accident there, and we go around the accident, and there's, right here, you don't even see it. I guess the camera got squashed there. But anyway, what happened is the bike crashed on its side from stones in the road, and I mean, it laid on its side with my leg underneath it for 10 minutes. And that's the story of the FZR. The first day out. You can't believe that. I had not even put gas in the bike other than the first time when I put the bike together for the last time. But that's the story of the FZR. Now, there's also, and maybe I'll make a future video of repairing the paint. Because to repair the paint on a bike this complex, I had to repair a whole lot of paintwork. And I had to invent some ways of doing it that would make it a practical job. And I think I did a good job doing that. I'm going to think about doing that in the near future. Looking at that snow reminds me of this restoration. Oh, if you only knew. The days of laying out that stripe. But the point is, anything worth having is the labor of love is a labor of love. And there's not really a whole lot you can do about making it easy. And then you have the same thing. If it was easy, everybody just write a check and have it. When you have something like this, you can't write a check. Maybe you can't even pay one of these custom bike builders to do it. I don't know. I don't even care either way. But I do care about having that bike in my collection. It's a priceless piece of the part of motorcycling that I like, is taking a bike that's really seen a rough life, bring it back to life, and enjoy it the way it's meant to be ridden. And I hope I have this bike. As long as I'm alive, I will enjoy opening that throttle and going through the gears. It's a very special bike to me.